Hey, glad you're back. We are in our series on strength training, and the focus today is going to be on communication and developing our communication skills. Strength training is probably one of those areas in our relationship that I think oftentimes gets overlooked. And it's this whole idea of developing the skills, the muscles that are required for a strong, healthy, growing relationship.
Right.
And I think one of the things that we found is that when you start talking to people about why relationships fail, you will always hear communication problems.
Right.
Communication problems. Some people might say, "Well, it was money that was the problem," but the reality is, it was probably a communication issue around the topic of money.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of people who, they just accept the fact that communication's weak, and it's just like who I am. It's just like that's just the way it is.
Right.
We have communication problems, and that's
we don't do anything to try to make it better.
Yeah, it's just who I am.
Yeah.
Instead of saying this is a skill, skills can be learned, skills can be developed. Practicing those skills to improve upon them.
Right.
So over the next several weeks, or over the next several videos, we're going to be drilling down a little bit into different aspects of communication. But let's just start today with this idea that communication equals shared meaning, not shared words. So communication, when we talk about communication, we're not talking about there was an exchange of words. We're talking about there is an exchange of a lot of different things that communicate. Words, body language, positioning, a lot of things that communicate, but you really haven't had communication between two people until there's shared meaning. We can share a lot of words. It's what she said and it's what she meant, and they're two completely different things. And you might we hear through our lens.
Right.
So we're going to base this on the foundation right up front that communication is about sharing meaning. Where we're going to start is probably one of the most important and most critical aspects to effective communication, and that's listening skills. There's a difference between hearing and listening. There's a difference between hearing and listening. You can hear words, and we hear things all the time going on in the background. There's this noise over here, and you heard the noise, or the TV's on over here, and you hear it, but you don't even know what they're saying on there. You're hearing, but you're not listening. And I think there's an element of listening that to share meaning that requires our participation as a listener. So we're going to talk today about active listening. The difference between active listening and passive hearing. Typically, when you're passive in the process, when you're just not engaged, you're not actively involved in it, you might have hearing, but you're probably not getting the meaning and the depth and what's really being communicated. And that's why so many misunderstandings happen. There's a great quote. Let's try here. Most misunderstandings in a relationship happen somewhere between the ears and the mouth. And sometimes we're speaking and talking and speaking and talking, and we haven't stopped to listen and use the ears we have. We were given two ears and one mouth, which probably means we should shut up once in a while and spend more time listening than talking. So that's what I'm going to do, because if you're not getting it yet, I'm the one who loves to talk, but Rob is going to teach us some stuff on active listening today. And these are some strategies that you can implement to improve your listening skills. Now I want you to key in on the word again, that this is active listening. All right, so what can folks do to improve their active listening skills?
Well, there are many things that a person could work on to improve their skills, but we're just going to highlight 4 of these things. One of the things that I want you to notice, first of all, is that each one of these 4 items uses the word intentional, because that's a part of active listening is the intentionality of it. You have to do certain things on purpose in order to make a difference. So the first one is intentional body positioning. So think of it as you're at a restaurant trying to have a conversation with your partner, and they are people watching. They're distracted by any little movement that goes by.
Yeah.
And that's very distracting to the person who's speaking. They automatically know that they don't have your full attention.
Right. And I think that's so much of it. It's showing that I've got your attention.
Right.
And when you reposition your body, that communicates.
Right. So the intentional body positioning then is when you're in a conversation, you want to be facing the person, and not just with your head, but like it's changing your whole body position. They know they've got your attention because you are turning toward them. You're focused on them. Just to give you an example, in our life, we office together out of our home, and we each have a desk and computers and monitors and stuff. The other day, Daryl was talking to me, and I even thought I was listening, but it turns out I was just hearing kind of wah, 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 wah. But I stopped him mid-sentence and I said, "I'm sorry. I was distracted by what I was doing on the computer. I was still engaged in that." And I said, "I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't really hear you because I wasn't really listening. Could we start over?" And I turned in my chair, looked away from my computer. I turned toward him and listened. And it made a huge difference.
Well, and I think one of the things that happened in that conversation, and has happened at different times, is you'll be having a conversation, and then the person talking will ask you a question about the conversation you just had.
You bust me all the time.
And it's like,
I'm really working on.
Here, and what do you think of that?
Think of what?
Busted.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you're called out because you weren't really listening. You may have been hearing, but you weren't listening. You weren't actively participating in the conversation. And I think sometimes we think that my active participation happens with my mouth, that I'm participating in the conversation.
Yeah.
But you actively participate in the conversation when you reposition your body, and now it's harder to be distracted. You can still be distracted, but it's harder to be distracted, which I think leads you into your second one there.
Yeah. The second one, super important, and something that I'm seriously working on improving. That is intentional distraction removal. So we've all experienced this, some more than others, I'm sure, but nowadays in our society, everyone's got a device. It's your phone, it's your iPad, it's your computer, it's your Kindle, whatever it might be. We've all got them in our hands all the time, it seems like. So that's one of the biggest distractions that is easier to set aside because it's an actual object. So it's really important to remove the distractions as much as possible for intentional active listening. So set the phone down, mute the TV, put the remote down, then you're turning toward the person who's talking and you are eliminating as many distractions as possible. For me, the other day, it was turning away from my computer and listening actively.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's different conversations. We're all going to have this. You have the conversation that's just a surface level, real quick, and the listening isn't at that depth that may be required in another conversation. But I think we've gotten so comfortable with that context that it just bleeds over into all of our communications. Yeah. And so the more you can practice, and again, it takes practice. These are skills that require intentional, on purpose practice. And the more you can practice, the better you will get at giving the focused attention.
And the more you're practicing, the more you're thinking about this, the more you catch yourself doing it the wrong way.
Right.
You know, I'm catching myself a lot more now I have a problem with distractions. Hi, my name is Robin. I have a problem with distractions.
Squirrel!
So I'm working on it, actively, intentionally working on it, because it doesn't just happen.
Well, and I think it's also helping our relationship that we understand that too, that we know that this is a struggle for not just everybody out there, but it's a struggle for us. And so we're honest with that, which that takes us to a whole new level when we can acknowledge this is a weakness. We can acknowledge that we're working on it, and we can speak into each other's lives when it happens so that we can all grow and improve. What's your next one?
So number 3 kind of goes right along with intentional distraction removal, and that is intentional eye contact. So think back to the last conversation you had. Were you looking at the person? The person who's talking usually is trying to make eye contact, but we're talking about intentional active listening. So as a listener, it's also important that I make eye contact with who I'm listening to.
Right. And we do this with our kids, right? Look at me when I'm talking to you. Isn't that,
Yeah.
You know, and then that's what we do for our children. But then we go act like children with our spouse, and the spouse is talking to us. And we just did this with our kid, but our spouse is talking to us, and we're looking over here, our eyes are wandering over there. You're sitting at the restaurant, and you're watching people go by, and you're not engaged. And yet it's something that we want, that oftentimes we don't do.
It's one of the most obvious things that shows a person whether you're paying attention or not.
Yeah.
It's very obvious in a conversation. And my younger brother called me out on this years ago, like 15 or more years ago, because I had a habit of, he was talking to me and I'm listening, but my eyes are flitting around at any little movement that's happening. And he said, you know what? You're not paying attention. And that I wanted to pay attention, and it really hit me because it was very obvious to him as the speaker that I was not giving him the proper attention.
Well, and I think what that says to him is you really don't care about me.
Right.
As a speaker in a conversation, when people do these things, my value just goes up.
Right.
You care about me. You're interested in me. You care about what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that elevates the relationship and the value of the person that we're listening to or not listening to, and devaluing them. And he felt devalued.
Right.
So I wonder, how often do we devalue our relationships? Mm-hmm. This will change that. This is a game changer. Yep. This stuff is a game changer.
Yep.
Sure.
So the 4th one is intentional attention. So obviously these all relate to one another. So some of the things are kind of crossing over, but you just listening to someone, or just even facing a person, intentional body positioning. So you're doing that one. Intentional distraction removal. Okay, so you've set your phone down. You've looked away from your computer. You're not looking at the television, whatever that device is, or that thing that's pulling you away. You can even have intentional eye contact. But your attention is a mental thing. Right. It's internal. So I can be doing all 3 of these things that will greatly improve my ability to listen. But my mind could be going 100 miles an hour on some totally different subject, and I'm still not listening. Yeah. And you can't see it, but you kind of can. Yeah. You kind of know.
Well, when you ask the question.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You've asked me a question, I'm like, I don't know how to answer that. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Yeah.
Well, and I think this is going to come into our next video when we talk about empathetic listening. See, today we're talking about active listening. But when we transition to empathetic listening, I think so many of us listen not to understand, but we listen to reply. Right. And our mind is all about what we're going to say next, or having an answer, and so our mind is not really listening to fully understand what that person's saying. So in our next video, we're going to talk about empathetic listening and how you can develop the skills. These skills actually get deeper and deeper and maybe even a little more challenging.
Yeah.
It's hard. This is not easy stuff. And I think it's not easy because we've been so trained and conditioned through our life. We've been educated on communication.
Yeah.
We have communication skills at some level. But I'm not sure we've gone to the depth of communication that will transform your relationship.
Right.
And the cool part about this, the exciting part for me, and one of the reasons I love teaching this and I'm excited about teaching this, is because this doesn't just apply to your relationship. So when you develop these skills and you master the art of communication, you just took your entire life to a whole new level. Right. Think about this for a minute. You're on your job with your coworkers and your boss, and you're the employee who actually listens and gets the task right. You're the one who gets the promotion and the raises. You want to change your financial structure in life? Master the art of communication.
And listening, especially.
And listening is a major part of that. There's all these skills, but listening, when you just take that one piece of communication and master that, you went to another level. You put all these skills that we're going to teach together and you master that, you just went to another level. And your life in all aspects will be radically different and improved.
Right. Going back to your relationship, your marriage, your significant other, that sort of thing. When you implement these 4 things, just these 4 things, you will be amazed at the changes and the results that you see from that. Your connection, your intimacy, it's going to affect all of those things because your partner is going to feel listened to.
Right.
Your partner is going to feel understood and valued. And you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong with that.
On the other side of that is when you don't, there's a devaluation.
Right.
When you just react and respond and interrupt, and it's critical and it's fix it. And we're going to talk about some of this next video, but there's this, the life goes out. I'm not important to you. I'm not valued by you. All of this raises the value of each other and the relationship.
Right.
And that is so cool.
Yeah.
You want to go to an extraordinary level. You want to have an extraordinary relationship, not just an ordinary relationship. You want to save your relationship. This is a great place to start.
Yes.
Is just listen. Conflict and broken relationships and dysfunction and some of that stuff, a lot of it is because the other person doesn't feel heard.
Right.
And if you just step back and start listening to what they're really saying, you'll get it. You'll definitely want to watch the next video on empathetic listening if you're in that place and that person needs to feel heard. Empathetic listening, they kind of combine together. It takes active listening to have empathetic listening. You can't have empathetic listening without active listening, but you can have active listening without empathetic listening. Yeah. So we're glad you're here. Join us in the next video for empathetic listening and the power of listening skills and how it relates to communication. Have a great day. Go live intentionally, love on purpose, and live an extraordinary life.
Thank you for joining us today.
Check out our website with resources to help grow your relationship at xtraomarriage.com.
That's xtraomarriage.com. Like our Facebook page and share our content with your friends on social media.
Make a decide and set your intention for an extraordinary marriage. Start today.